members of the PEP, Chancellor Carranza, and all participants in the meeting. I am Sheree Gibson, President of District 29 President's Council. This evening, I am providing comments on fair student funding as a member of the city's Fair Student Funding Task Force. I implore the panel not to consider any changes to the formula without reviewing the December 2019 report agreed upon by all members of the task force. There are recommendations in that report that directly impact decisions on changes to the formula and weights that should be considered by the members of the PEP. Throughout our work, we heard resoundingly that current funding is not adequate to support our students, especially our students in temporary housing, students living in poverty, or our English language and multi-language learners, and students with disabilities. The COVID pandemic brought a floodlight on the inequities in schools across the city. A large portion of those inequities trace back to the uneven funding. Knowing that our students will need more support academically, emotionally, and socially, the mayor has now proposed a $100 million cut to fair student funding. Cuts, changes without consideration of the recommendations in that report is a disservice to our children. I urge all of our officials, advocates, and families to work together to increase funding for our schools and ensure that there are no cuts to fair student funding or changes without informed information. Thank you.
Thank you. We have now heard all public comments related to this item. I will now turn the meeting over to Chair Leon.
Thank you so much. So I'll now ask members of the panel if they want to chime in, if they have any questions or comments relating to this proposal.
Yeah, it's Michael. I actually just have a couple of really more process questions. Number one, I just recently heard about the Fair Student Funding Committee and its report, and I have not seen it, and I would love to be able to receive it so that I can review it. And it really leads into my process question. I know there have been a lot of people looked at it in the past. I'm already starting to hear about people going forward who are very eager to talk about what's in the model for fair student funding and can any of it be changed, and how do we address this going forward? I understand this should be voted tonight, but if people want to explore changes, how do we do that?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah. So, Peter, go ahead. Or you?
No, this is Isaac. I was just...
Isaac, sorry.
Yeah, just concurring with Michael. I don't have to repeat it. I had the same thoughts.
I'm sorry, and I'm actually going to jump in on one more thing for the person who spoke from Bayside High School. I think the whole issue of CTE and how it's funded is important. My daughter went to a CTE school where the CTE program did get extra weights. I understand there's something in the policy that says that CTE programs in more general high schools don't get those extra weights, and that's another area I would love to have further discussions about, especially when I hear about schools like Bayside that have multiple CTE programs and they aren't getting the funding that perhaps they deserve.
Yes, so thank you, Michael and Isaac, for your interest in the Fair Student Funding Formula and for asking these questions. I'm happy to have conversations with anyone on the Fair Student Funding Formula. A lot of what I do has been, over the last couple of years in this position, has been going out and talking to different advocate groups and others, parents, students, about the Fair Student Funding Formula. In fact, when I took this job, that was something the chancellor asked me to do specifically. So I'm happy to do that more. I'm happy to sit with both of you to talk through it in more detail. There is a tremendous amount of information that's available on the department's website through the Info Hub, through the financial reports section. There's a 50 pages plus guide that explains the formula in great detail, which is a good reference for a lot of the terminology that's used commonly when we talk about it. But in general, I'm always happy to talk about the formula and how we can improve it as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from panel members?
Yeah.
Yes, panel member Calangelo.
Thank you. Lindsay, just jumping on to Michael's question. So going forward, after a vote tonight, can there still be changes?
The vote that you're taking tonight is for the weights for the upcoming school year. So it would be, actually, what I should say is it would be, we have never changed weights mid-school year. And I just want to be very clear that changing weights is something that we take very seriously. We've done in the past, and this panel has voted on increased weights for English language learners in 2016. And so it's something that we are required by Chancellor's regulation to take our proposed weights to the CECs, and we go to each CEC during the months of February and March, and then we bring the weights to the panel. So I really think changing weights, the next opportunity at the very earliest would be for the next school year, given the public engagement requirements and that are involved in weight decisions.
Lindsay, this is Shannon. I just wanted to just clarify and have you confirm that what we're voting on tonight with regards to the weights is that there are in fact no changes to the weights.
That is accurate.
Okay, and ask if, the conversations that we've had, the very animated conversations we've had with you, love that you're such a great sport, could continue, like the conversations that you're offering to have with Mike and Peter about really interrogating this and examining this is something that we can actually do moving forward next school year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. Just to piggyback, it's Natalie. Something that came up in our briefings also is the understanding that these designations of well below standards, et cetera, are based on standardized testing that isn't going to take place this year. It's a 1-year lag. So these weights that we're voting on are based on last year's testing, but that the entire conversation might be shifting starting in February, as you say. So it would do us all a good service to start the conversation earlier, I think, for the following year, given everything is going to look very different. Is that accurate?
You're absolutely right, Natalie. That's absolutely accurate. I think look, we have tremendous challenges facing our school system in terms of the very large cuts already in our budget and cuts that are likely coming from the state. And so, this formula has $10 billion that runs through it. And so it is a significant funding source for our schools. It's of utmost importance. And so we take that very seriously. Happy to take input from others on how to improve it. But I need to be very candid that making weight changes can cost money. And we just need to be really upfront and honest with ourselves about whether we can actually afford to make the changes that we would really like to see in the formula. But I'm absolutely happy to engage in conversations around changes to the formula that may be unique because of this pandemic, or are just changes that people would like, or just how does it work and what does it mean. Happy to have those conversations with this body and others.
Lindsay, this is Deb. Just thinking about what Sheree said and the committee that's been working on this, and that really we all need to be a part of the conversation. So it would be good to be briefed on what that committee came up with. Unfortunately, we all know that fair student funding is not 100% funding as we would like to see our children funded. So, we joke or not joke that fair student funding is not fair. But the reality is that we're dealing with budget cuts And to my knowledge, that's why the weights are staying the same. But I do believe we all need to be in the conversation about changing the weights and why we want to do that going forward.
Yeah, this is Isaac, just piggybacking on what Deb said, and what's been said. I know we talk about building the plane as we fly it, but changing FSF midstream might be like changing the engine, and maybe that's a bit much, and to try to keep the plane up in the air. But at the same time, and it being that it needs a deep conversation, that means time as well. But as Mike said, I know for myself, I was just hearing about this committee recommendations. I would like to know a lot about it. And then a deep conversation over the course of the year. Then when we're here next April, then we would know, or understand what any changes proposed are and have been a part of it early on.
Noted, and understand the process that you are raising for us here, and I think this is really excellent feedback for us to take back in terms of our planning for this process going forward. So appreciate the feedback. I think just to make a plug, the number one thing that I think we all can work on together is advocating our federal government to provide direct support to localities to help ease some of the pain. So that would be sort of the number one thing I would ask. If you would like to make an immediate impact, please help in our advocacy in that effort. That will be, if we can get direct aid to localities, that will be the most immediate significant financial relief that we could get.
There's no other question or comments. We'll move to the votes. Secretary Freeman, could you please note any recusals related to this item?
There are no recusals on this item.
Thank you. Secretary Freeman, could you please now take a roll call vote on the item?
Okay. Peter Calandrella.
Approved.
Isaac Carmignani.
In favor.
Jenny Ocharkan.
Approved.
April Chapman.
Approved.
Deborah Dillingham.
Approved.
Kathy Park Price.
Approved.
Adelaide Green Giles.
Approved.
Michael Kraft.
Approved.
Vanessa Leon.
Approved.
Lori Podbesker.
Approved.
Shannon Wade.
Approved.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, everyone. So the next voting item on tonight's agenda